This video examines published sources for educational purposes. Interpretations are attributed. No claims are asserted as fact without citation. May 16, 1940. The Reich Chancellery in Berlin hummed with the confidence of recent victory as Hermann Göring, Reichsmarshal of Nazi Germany and commander of the Luftwaffe, reviewed intelligence reports from across the Atlantic. According to captured German documents analysed by historian Richard Overy, Göring had just received word of President Roosevelt's ambitious declaration to Congress. The American president, speaking 6 days after Germany's lightning assault into Holland, Belgium and France, had announced what seemed to German ears like pure fantasy. America would build an air force of 50,000 airplanes and produce 50,000 more each year. Göring's reaction, as recorded in post-war interrogation transcripts, was immediate and dismissive. He laughed. Pure propaganda, the Reichsmarshal declared to his staff, according to interrogation records preserved in the National Archives. No one can build 50,000 planes a year. His confidence was understandable. In 1939, military historians note, total aircraft production for the United States military was fewer than 3,000 planes. The Luftwaffe, by contrast, had already demonstrated its devastating effectiveness across Poland, Norway, and now Western Europe. German aircraft had achieved air superiority wherever they appeared, and Göring's pilots were the most experienced combat aviators in the world. What Göring couldn't have imagined, what no military planner in history had ever conceived possible, was that by 1944, American factories would be producing nearly 100,000 aircraft annually. The story of how America transformed Roosevelt's seemingly impossible dream into an industrial avalanche that would bury the Axis powers represents one of the most dramatic miscalculations in military history. Before we uncover today's secret from World War II, if you enjoy exploring the hidden stories and overlooked battles of history, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more untold wartime histories. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always amazed that these memories of the past connect us across so many corners of the world. The context surrounding Roosevelt's bold proclamation reveals the desperate circumstances facing the free world in May 1940. According to historian David M. Kennedy's analysis in Freedom from Fear, the American public had been shocked by Germany's blitzkrieg tactics that spring. The seemingly invincible Wehrmacht had conquered Denmark and Norway in weeks, then launched their devastating assault through the Ardennes that would lead to France's fall within 6 weeks. British forces were retreating toward Dunkirk, and the entire European balance of power was collapsing with unprecedented speed. Roosevelt understood, as documented in his papers held at the Franklin D. Roosevelt Presidential Library, that dramatic rhetoric was necessary to mobilize a reluctant nation still recovering from the Great Depression. In his message to Congress on appropriations for national defense, the president declared these were ominous days, days whose swift and shocking developments force every neutral nation to look to its defenses in the light of new factors. The brutal reality was that America's military preparedness, as noted by historian Jeffrey Perrett, ranked the United States Army 39th in the world, possessing a cavalry force of 50,000 and using horses to pull artillery pieces. Göring's dismissive assessment reflected broader German misunderstanding of American industrial capacity and national character. In post-war prison interviews documented by interrogator Leon Goldenson, Göring revealed his pre-war evaluation of American potential. He acknowledged believing the economic and technical potential of the United States to be unusually great, particularly the Air Force, and understood that it would be comparatively easy to convert factories to war production, in particular the mighty automobile industry. Yet even this partial recognition failed to grasp the scale and speed of transformation that would follow. Hitler himself, according to Göring's testimony, disagreed with even these modest assessments. The Führer believed, as recorded in interrogation transcripts, that America would not intervene because of its unpleasant experiences in World War I. The United States helped everybody and got nothing for it the last time. This fundamental misreading of American resolve would prove catastrophic for Nazi strategic planning. The challenge Roosevelt had set before American industry was staggering in scope. As aviation historian Bill Yenny documented, Roosevelt's goal of 50,000 aircraft exceeded the total of all planes built in the United States since the Wright brothers' 1903 flight at Kitty Hawk. The American aviation industry in 1940 consisted of small-scale manufacturers building aircraft essentially by hand. Boeing, Douglas, and Lockheed were producing planes in the dozens, not thousands. The concept of mass-producing complex military aircraft on automotive assembly lines existed only in theory. To achieve this transformation, Roosevelt recruited business leaders who understood mass production. According to historian Arthur Herman's research, the president turned to William Knudsen, president of General Motors and a Danish-born automotive industry executive who had worked under Henry Ford before becoming one of America's foremost experts in manufacturing efficiency. Knudsen's experience building millions of automobiles would prove crucial in reimagining how aircraft could be manufactured. The skepticism from aviation experts was immediate and vocal. Dutch Kindleberger, president of North American Aviation, dismissed the automotive industry's potential contribution with a cutting remark documented by historian Charles K. Hyde. "You can't expect a blacksmith to make a watch overnight." The aviation establishment viewed aircraft manufacturing as a craft requiring specialized skills that automotive workers couldn't possibly master. Each plane was seen as a precision instrument requiring individual attention from skilled craftsmen. This skepticism extended beyond industry circles. German intelligence services, as revealed in captured documents analyzed by historian Richard Overy, reported to Berlin that American aircraft production claims were propaganda designed to intimidate the Axis powers. German aviation experts calculated that the complexity of military aircraft made mass production impossible on the scale Roosevelt proposed. Their own aircraft industry, despite years of preparation for war, had never approached such production levels. The transformation that would prove these assessments catastrophically wrong began with a radical reimagining of how complex machinery could be manufactured. According to historian Mark Wilson's analysis, Knudsen assembled a team of industrialists who approached aircraft production with automotive principles. Instead of building each plane as a unique creation, they envisioned breaking down aircraft assembly into thousands of standardized components that could be manufactured simultaneously across multiple facilities. The Ford Motor Company's Willow Run project exemplified this revolutionary approach. As documented by historian Charles K. Hyde in spring 1941, months before Pearl Harbor, Edsel Ford and production chief Charlie Sorensen began mobilizing what they described as the most ambitious industrial project in history. Their goal was creating a factory that could produce the B-24 Liberator, America's largest bomber, at a rate of 1 aircraft per hour. The B-24 presented extraordinary complexity for mass production. According to technical specifications preserved in Ford archives, each aircraft was 67 feet long, containing 450,000 individual parts and 360,000 rivets in 550 different sizes. The finished bomber weighed 18 tons and represented one of the most sophisticated machines ever created. Converting such complexity into assembly line production would require innovations that had never been attempted in aviation manufacturing. Construction of Willow Run began on what historian Lowell J. Carr described as 975 acres of Henry Ford's farmland near Ypsilanti, Michigan. The US government contributed $200 million to create what would become the largest factory building in the world. Albert Kahn, the architect who had designed Ford's revolutionary Highland Park plant, created a facility stretching over a mile in length with floor space covering 67 acres under a single roof. The scale of the undertaking stunned observers. According to contemporary accounts documented by the Detroit Free Press, the factory would employ over 40,000 workers operating around the clock. Raw materials would enter one end of the building as aluminum sheets, steel tubing, and electronic components, then emerge as complete bombers capable of carrying 10 tons of explosives across continents. Yet the initial results seem to validate the skeptics' predictions. The first B-24, scheduled for delivery in May 1942, didn't fly until September, leading media outlets to mockingly refer to Willow Run as Will It Run. The plant faced extraordinary startup problems as Ford employees, accustomed to automobile assembly, struggled to adapt their techniques to aircraft production. Labor difficulties plagued the facility with high absentee rates and rapid employee turnover, partly because the factory was nearly an hour's drive from Detroit during wartime gasoline and tire rationing. Hermann Göring, monitoring American production reports through German intelligence some intelligence services likely viewed these early difficulties as confirmation of his assessment that American aircraft production goals were unachievable propaganda. The Luftwaffe continued its devastating effectiveness across multiple fronts, and German aircraft production, while smaller in scale than American ambitions, was meeting military requirements with proven designs and experienced workers. What Göring couldn't see from his Berlin headquarters was the systematic problem-solving occurring across American industrial facilities. According to historian Arthur Herman's research, American engineers were developing revolutionary manufacturing techniques that would transform not just aircraft production, but industrial processes permanently. The challenges at Willow Run and similar facilities weren't signs of failure, but growing pains in creating an entirely new form of mass production. The breakthrough that would validate Roosevelt's seemingly impossible vision was still ahead. Building momentum in factories across America where automotive workers were learning to build wings instead of fenders, and where the principles of mass production were being applied to machines of war with unprecedented results. The transformation accelerating across American factories during 1942 and 1943 began revealing innovations that would redefine industrial warfare forever. According to production records analysed by historian Charles K. Hyde, the breakthrough at Willow Run came through systematic application of what Ford engineers called progressive assembly. Instead of building each B-24 Liberator as a complete unit from start to finish, they divided the massive bomber into 5 major sub-assemblies that moved through the factory on separate production lines before final integration. The nose section, containing the bombardier's station and navigation equipment, was assembled in one area, while the wing sections were constructed in another. The fuselage moved through its own dedicated line, where workers installed electrical systems, hydraulic components, and structural elements in precise sequence. According to technical documentation preserved in Ford archives, this parallel production approach reduced assembly time from weeks to days, then from days to hours. By early 1943, as documented by historian Lowell J. Carr, Willow Run had overcome its initial difficulties and was approaching the production rates that aviation experts had declared impossible. The facility employed 42,000 workers operating in 3 shifts around the clock. Raw aluminum entered the factory at a rate of 60 tons daily, emerging as finished bombers. The pilots flew directly from the adjacent airfield to combat theatres worldwide. German intelligence services, according to captured documents analysed by historian Richard Overy, initially dismissed reports of American production increases as Allied propaganda designed to boost morale. Luftwaffe planners calculated that complex military aircraft required specialised manufacturing techniques that couldn't be scaled to automotive production levels. Their own aircraft industry, despite years of wartime experience, had never approached the production volumes American factories were claiming to achieve, the reality becoming visible to German reconnaissance flights over American industrial centres painted a different picture entirely. According to wartime intelligence reports discovered in German archives, aerial photographs of Detroit area factories showed continuous streams of completed aircraft on airfields adjacent to production facilities. The images revealed parking areas filled with hundreds of bombers and fighters awaiting delivery, a sight that German intelligence officers initially attributed to photographic manipulation or clever deception. Hermann Göring's confidence in his original assessment began facing challenges from multiple sources within the German military hierarchy. According to post-war testimony documented by interrogator Leon Goldensohn, Luftwaffe field commanders were reporting increasing encounters with American aircraft bearing production serial numbers that suggested manufacturing rates far exceeding German calculations. The steady increase in Allied bomber formations over European targets provided visible evidence that American industrial capacity was approaching unprecedented levels. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the transformation of American industry was accelerating beyond Roosevelt's original 50,000 aircraft goal. According to production statistics compiled by the War Production Board and analyzed by historian Arthur Herman, aircraft manufacturing had risen from 41st place among American industries to first place in less than 3 years. The automotive industry's conversion to aircraft production was generating innovations that revolutionized both sectors permanently. General Motors, under William Knudsen's direction, had converted multiple automotive facilities to produce aircraft engines, propellers, and airframes. According to company records documented by historian Mark Wilson, GM's Allison division was manufacturing liquid-cooled engines for P-51 Mustang fighters at rates that exceeded total German fighter engine production. The Fisher Body division had transformed from producing automobile bodies to manufacturing wings for B-25 Mitchell bombers, applying automotive stamping techniques to aircraft aluminum components. The Consolidated Aircraft Corporation, working with Ford's mass production expertise, was achieving remarkable results with their B-24 Liberator program. According to production records analyzed by historian Bill Yen, the partnership between traditional aircraft manufacturers and automotive companies was creating hybrid production systems that combined aviation precision with automotive efficiency. Workers trained in automobile assembly were learning to rivet aircraft structures, while aviation engineers were discovering how automotive quality control methods could improve aircraft reliability. By mid-1943, the statistical evidence of American industrial transformation was becoming undeniable even to skeptical German observers. According to War Production Board data compiled by historian Alan Millward, American aircraft production had increased from fewer than 3,000 military planes in 1939 to over 60,000 in 1943. The rate of increase suggested that Roosevelt's original 50,000 annual production goal would soon appear conservative rather than ambitious. The Ford Willow Run facility alone was demonstrating production capabilities that challenged every assumption about aircraft manufacturing complexity. According to plant records preserved by historian Charles K. Hyde, Willow Run was producing one complete B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes by late 1943. The facility had achieved Henry Ford's original vision of applying automotive assembly line principles to the most complex military aircraft in the American arsenal. Each completed B-24 emerging from Willow Run represented far more than a single bomber. According to technical analyses by aviation historian Bill Yen, every aircraft contained innovations developed through mass production requirements that improve performance, reliability, and manufacturing efficiency. The process of scaling aircraft production to automotive levels was generating technological advances that benefited both military and civilian aviation permanently. German aviation experts, monitoring Allied bomber formations over European targets, were observing the practical results of American industrial transformation. According to Luftwaffe combat reports analysed by historian Richard Overy, German pilots were encountering bomber formations of unprecedented size and consistency. The aircraft displayed manufacturing quality that suggested standardised production methods rather than hand-built construction traditionally associated with military aviation. The psychological impact on German military leadership was becoming significant according to post-war interrogation records. Officers who had dismissed American industrial capacity as propaganda were confronting evidence that Roosevelt's seemingly impossible production goals were not only achievable, but were being exceeded systematically. The implications for German strategic planning were profound as the Luftwaffe faced increasing pressure from growing numbers of well-built American aircraft. Meanwhile, American industrial innovation was extending beyond individual aircraft production to encompass entire aviation ecosystems. According to research by historian Jeffrey Perrott, American factories were producing not just airframes and engines, but complete supply chains including spare parts, maintenance equipment, training aircraft, and ground support systems. The scale of production was creating logistical capabilities that could sustain air operations across multiple global theaters simultaneously. The Pratt & Whitney aircraft engine facilities exemplified this comprehensive approach to aviation manufacturing. According to company records analyzed by historian Mark Wilson, Pratt & Whitney was producing radial engines for fighter aircraft, transport planes, and bombers at rates that exceeded total axis engine production combined. The company had developed manufacturing techniques that maintained precision tolerances while achieving automotive-scale production volumes. Similarly, the Curtiss-Wright Corporation was demonstrating how traditional aircraft manufacturers could adapt automotive production principles to achieve unprecedented output. According to production data compiled by historian Bill Yen, Curtiss-Wright facilities were manufacturing P-40WC 46 Commando transport aircraft and Aircrafter Hawk fighters, engines simultaneously across multiple production lines that operated continuously. The cumulative effect of these industrial transformations was creating an aviation manufacturing capacity that exceeded the wildest projections of pre-war planners. According to War Production Board statistics analyzed by historian Alan Mill Ward, American aircraft production in 1943 represented more manufacturing capacity than the entire global aviation industry had possessed before the war began. The transformation Roosevelt had envisioned was becoming reality through systematic application of industrial principles that German planners had never considered possible. Hermann Göring's original laughter at American production goals was giving way to growing concern about the strategic implications of Allied industrial superiority. According to German military records captured after the war, Luftwaffe planning documents from late 1943 reflected increasing awareness that American production capabilities represented a fundamental challenge to German military strategy. The assumption that complex military equipment couldn't be mass-produced was proving catastrophically incorrect as American factories continued, exceeding every production milestone. The approaching peak of American aircraft production would soon reveal the full magnitude of Roosevelt's industrial vision and demonstrate why Göring's initial dismissal represented one of the most costly miscalculations in military history. The statistical reality emerging from American factories by 1944 would transform Hermann Göring's laughter into stunned silence. According to War Production Board data analyzed by historian Alan Millward, American aircraft production reached 96,318 military aircraft that year, nearly doubling Roosevelt's seemingly impossible goal of 50,000 annual planes. The numbers represented more than statistics. They documented the complete transformation of American society into what historian Arthur Herman described as the arsenal of democracy. The Ford Willow Run facility had become the crown jewel of this transformation. According to plant records preserved by historian Charles K. Hyde, the massive factory was producing a completed B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes at peak efficiency. Pilots and crew members slept on 1,300 cots adjacent to the production line, waiting for fresh bombers to roll off the assembly line for immediate delivery to combat theatres. The facility operated with mathematical precision that defied traditional aircraft manufacturing assumptions. German reconnaissance flights over American industrial centers were providing intelligence that contradicted every pre-war assessment of Allied production capacity. According to captured Luftwaffe intelligence reports analyzed by historian Richard Overy, aerial photographs revealed parking lots filled with thousands of completed aircraft awaiting delivery. The images showed production facilities operating continuously, with night shifts illuminated by floodlights that could be seen from miles away. The psychological impact on German military leadership was documented in post-war interrogation transcripts preserved in the National Archives. General Adolf Galland, commander of Luftwaffe fighter forces, later described the moment when German intelligence officers presented evidence of American production achievements. According to Galland's testimony recorded by interrogator Leon Goldensohn, the briefing room fell silent as officers realized the implications of facing an enemy with virtually unlimited aircraft production capacity. Hermann Göring's response to these intelligence reports revealed the depth of German miscalculation. According to interrogation records documented by historian Richard Overy, Göring initially accused his intelligence officers of accepting Allied propaganda as fact. The Reichsmarshal insisted that complex military aircraft couldn't be mass-produced using automotive techniques, despite mounting evidence to the contrary from multiple sources across occupied Europe. The strategic implications were becoming clear to German field commanders facing Allied air operations. According to Luftwaffe combat reports analysed by historian Williamson Murray, German pilots were encountering bomber formations of unprecedented size and consistency. The aircraft displayed manufacturing quality that suggested standardised production methods rather than the hand-built construction traditionally associated with military aviation. American innovation extended beyond individual aircraft production to encompass comprehensive aviation ecosystems. According to research by historian Jeffrey Perrott, American factories were simultaneously producing airframes, engines, propellers, instruments, ammunition, spare parts, maintenance equipment, and training aircraft. The integrated approach created logistical capabilities that could sustain air operations across the Pacific, European, and Mediterranean theaters simultaneously. The Consolidated Aircraft Corporation exemplified this comprehensive manufacturing approach. According to company records analysed by historian Bill Yen, consolidated facilities were producing B-24 Liberators, PBY Catalina flying boats, and various trainer aircraft, while maintaining quality standards that exceeded pre-war specifications. The company had successfully applied automotive quality control methods to aviation manufacturing without compromising the precision required for military aircraft. Pratt and Whitney's engine production achievements represented another dimension of American industrial transformation. According to production data compiled by historian Mark Wilson, Pratt and Whitney facilities were manufacturing radial engines for fighters, bombers, and transport aircraft at rates that exceeded total German engine production across all manufacturers. The company had developed precision manufacturing techniques that maintained tight tolerances while achieving unprecedented production volumes. The North American Aviation Corporation was demonstrating similar success with their P-51 Mustang fighter program. According to production records preserved by the National Air and Space Museum, North American was delivering completed Mustangs at rates that German intelligence officers initially dismissed as impossible. Each aircraft incorporated design improvements developed through mass production experience, creating fighters that combined superior performance with manufacturing efficiency. German attempts to counter American production advantages through technological innovation were proving insufficient against the scale of Allied manufacturing capacity. According to research by historian Edward Homser, German aircraft designers were developing advanced fighters and bombers with superior individual performance characteristics. But German production facilities couldn't manufacture these sophisticated designs in quantities necessary to offset American numerical advantages. The Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighter represented German technological superiority in individual aircraft design. According to technical analyses by aviation historian Bill Gunston, The Me-262 possessed performance capabilities that exceeded any Allied fighter in speed and firepower. However, production records analysed by historian Edward Homser revealed that German facilities manufactured fewer than 1,400 Me-262s throughout the entire war, while American factories were producing thousands of conventional fighters monthly. Luftwaffe training programs were deteriorating under the pressure of fuel shortages and pilot losses that German industrial capacity couldn't replace. According to research by historian Williamson Murray, German pilot training hours had decreased from over 200 hours in 1940 to fewer than 50 hours by 1944. American pilots, by contrast, were receiving over 400 hours of training before entering combat, supported by unlimited fuel supplies and dedicated training aircraft that didn't compete with combat requirements. The contrast between German and American aviation fuel production illustrated broader industrial disparities that were determining the war's outcome. According to data compiled by historian Alan Millward, American refineries were producing aviation gasoline at rates that exceeded total German fuel production across all categories. German synthetic fuel plants, despite representing technological achievements in chemical engineering, couldn't match American petroleum industry output supported by unlimited crude oil supplies. American aircraft production was generating innovations that transformed civilian aviation permanently. According to research by historian Roger Bilstein, mass production techniques developed for military aircraft manufacturing were creating standardized components, improved quality control methods, and manufacturing processes that would revolutionize post-war commercial aviation. The wartime transformation was establishing foundations for American dominance in global aviation markets that would persist for decades. The Boeing Aircraft Company was demonstrating how traditional aircraft manufacturers could achieve automotive-scale production without sacrificing engineering excellence. According to company records analyzed by historian Eugene Rogers, Boeing facilities were producing B-17 Flying Fortress bombers, B-29 Super Fortress bombers, and various military transport aircraft, while developing design improvements that enhance performance and manufacturing efficiency simultaneously. Douglas Aircraft Corporation was achieving similar success with their military transport and attack aircraft programs. According to production data preserved by the National Archives, Douglas facilities were manufacturing C-47 transport aircraft at rates that supplied not only American forces but Allied nations worldwide through Lend-Lease agreements. The standardized production effectively across diverse approach was creating aircraft that could operate geographic and climatic conditions. German intelligence services were providing increasingly sobering assessments of Allied industrial superiority to military leadership. According to captured documents analysed by historian Richard Overy, German intelligence reports from late 1944 acknowledged that American production capacity represented a fundamental strategic advantage that German industry couldn't match regardless of technological innovations or manufacturing improvements. The cumulative effect of American aircraft production was creating air superiority that enabled Allied operations across all theatres simultaneously. According to strategic analyses by historian Conrad Crane, American manufacturing capacity was supporting bomber operations over Germany, fighter escorts for strategic bombing campaigns, close air support for ground operations, anti-submarine patrols over Atlantic shipping lanes, and strategic bombing campaigns against Japanese industrial targets in the Pacific Theater. Hermann Göring's post-war reflections on American industrial achievements revealed the complete reversal of his initial assessment. According to interrogation transcripts preserved in the National Archives, Göring acknowledged that American production capabilities had exceeded German calculations by orders of magnitude that seemed impossible according to traditional manufacturing assumptions. The Reichsmarschall admitted that German strategic planning had failed to account for American society's capacity to mobilize industrial resources on unprecedented scales. The transformation of American aircraft production from Roosevelt's ambitious 1940 proclamation to the staggering reality of 1944 represented more than industrial achievement. According to historian David M. Kennedy's analysis, the aircraft production program demonstrated American democracy's capacity to mobilize national resources for sustained conflict while maintaining civilian production and social stability. The achievement validated Roosevelt's faith in American industrial potential against skepticism from both domestic critics and foreign adversaries. By war's end, American factories had produced over 300,000 military aircraft, according to official production statistics compiled by the War Production Board. The total exceeded the combined production of all other nations and represented manufacturing capacity that had seemed impossible when Roosevelt first announced his 50,000 aircraft goal in May 1940. Hermann Göring's laughter had been replaced by the thunderous roar of American bombers over German skies, powered by an industrial transformation that redefined the relationship between manufacturing capacity and military power forever. The magnitude of America's industrial achievement became undeniable when production statistics for 1944 were compiled by the War Production Board. According to records analysed by historian Alan Millward, American factories had delivered 96,318 military aircraft that year alone, nearly doubling Roosevelt's seemingly impossible goal that Hermann Göring had dismissed with such confidence 4 years earlier. Yet even these staggering numbers told only part of the story of transformation that would reshape warfare forever. The human cost of this industrial revolution was documented by labor historians who tracked the massive demographic shifts occurring across American manufacturing centers. According to research by historian Ruth Milkman, over 6 million Americans had migrated from rural areas to industrial cities to work in aircraft plants, creating overnight boom towns around facilities like Willow Run, Boeing's Seattle plants, and Consolidated Aircraft in San Diego. These workers, many of whom had never seen an airplane before Pearl Harbor, were now producing the most sophisticated military aircraft in history at rates that defied every traditional assumption about manufacturing complexity. German prisoners of war, transported to camps across the American heartland, provided unwitting intelligence about Allied production capacity that reached German military planners through Red Cross communications. According to captured correspondence analysed by historian Richard Overy, German POWs described witnessing endless streams of aircraft flying overhead during transport to prison facilities. These reports, initially dismissed by German intelligence as prisoner exaggeration, were corroborated by reconnaissance flights that revealed the devastating truth about American industrial transformation. The technological innovations emerging from mass aircraft production were revolutionizing manufacturing processes far beyond aviation. According to research by historian Mark Wilson, techniques developed for aircraft assembly were being adapted to produce ships, tanks, artillery, and electronic equipment at unprecedented rates. American industry had discovered that complex military equipment could be manufactured using automotive principles without sacrificing quality or performance, a revelation that contradicted decades of European manufacturing doctrine. By early 1945, the statistical comparison between American and German aircraft production revealed the complete failure of Göring's original assessment. According to data compiled by the United States Strategic Bombing Survey, German aircraft production peaked at approximately 36,000 combat aircraft in 1944, while American factories were delivering nearly 100,000 military aircraft annually. The disparity represented more than numerical superiority. It demonstrated fundamentally different approaches to industrial warfare that would determine the conflict's outcome. Hermann Göring's laughter in May 1940 had become a symbol of one of history's most catastrophic strategic miscalculations. According to post-war analyses by military historians, the Reichsmarschall's dismissal of American industrial potential represented a fundamental failure to understand how democratic societies could mobilize resources for total war. What began as Roosevelt's seemingly impossible dream of 50,000 aircraft annually had evolved into a production juggernaut that delivered over 300,000 military aircraft by war's end, fundamentally altering the balance of global power forever. The transformation of American industry from Roosevelt's ambitious proclamation to the thunderous reality of Allied air superiority demonstrates how industrial capacity became the decisive factor in modern warfare. Hermann Göring's confident laughter was ultimately silenced by the roar of American bombers overhead, powered by an industrial revolution that redefined what nations could achieve when survival demanded the impossible.